Good morning and welcome to our class, Building Family Communication Skills. This is class number 2, Take Time to Listen. And this is a continuation from our previous class. We're going to hit different topics each time. This is an online class that I'm pre-recording for our viewers. This way you guys can see it on your own schedule. And my name is Susan and I'll be teaching this class. If you have any questions, my number's on the screen. And I'm excited to be here today to present, not prevent, this is communication class, present this material. The objectives we have over the next few classes. Last week we tackled how family communication affects relationships. Today we're going to talk about effective ways to listen to other family members. And what an important time for us to practice our listening skills. Not always easy to do. So I'm glad to be engaging with this material myself. I have lots of family members that we all have different perspectives on things, and to be able to engage with them and maintain a good relationship, I could really use this class. So let's continue. So I wanted to review class number 1. Class number 1, we talked about communication, and we talked a lot about the speaking part of communicating. We covered that family communication is the building block of our relationships. It's how we engage with one another. And when we're communicating, it is not just words that we use, but we also communicate with our body language, and we communicate with objects like gifts to express ourselves. Every family and culture has different communication styles, and sometimes that can take a little negotiating. My husband comes from a very loud, over-the-top family where everyone talks over each other and talks at the same time, and I came from a family where we were much quieter, and we took turns talking. I really had to learn how to get a word in edgewise. And at the end of the class, we talked about how we can build our communication skills, and we can build our relationships, even with family members that we have that difficult relationship with. So today's topic is taking time to listen. So we covered the output part of communication, the talking part, the body language. Today we're going to talk about the receiving end, the listening portion. Listening is very important. Effective listening is one of the best ways to show that we care for the other person, and effective listening builds trust, but it takes a lot of patience and hard work. And a lot of times when I ask someone, what do you like about so-and-so? Why do you like talking with them? People will often answer, they're a really good listener. So that's something really that I try to strive for. Sometimes I feel like I talk too much, and I try to really become an effective listener. It's especially important in social work, in the work that I do. And so I've tried to continue to improve my skill set and bring that professional into my personal life. Now, listening is more than just hearing. Hearing is the process of sound waves going into the ear and into our brain, and we hear the words and sounds that are going on. Listening involves an understanding. It involves a connecting. It involves really an openness to the other person. A family member can tell when we're listening by noticing the eye contact we may or may not be making, our facial expressions, our body movements. Um, Part of listening can also be saying things like "I see" or "mm-hmm" to kind of indicate like you're there with the person. Um, I have to train my students who are working with seniors how to, and really this should be just how to engage with anyone, how to um, how to effectively listen with more than our ears. Um, think about your body language. What messages are we sending? Are we fidgeting? Are we rolling our eyes? Are we sarcastically smiling? Think about our body position. Are we facing the person that we're listening to? Or are we turned away? Do we have our arms crossed? Um, are we turning our back to the person? Are we very far away or are we way too close? Um, and that there's definitely cultural differences in the space between people when they're engaging with each other. Some cultures, personal space is much tighter than or closer than other cultures. So we need to be sensitive when we're engaging in those listening skills that we're respecting people's personal boundaries. Now, effective listening doesn't necessarily mean we agree with the message. We may not like what the other person is saying, but it's important in these relationships that we have to try to understand and identify what the person is saying. We may need to ask questions. Um, Sometimes um, family members just want a listening ear and they don't want advice. This was something I had to really learn in my relationship with my husband. I'm kind of a problem solver by nature, and so he would want to talk and unload and need me to listen, and I was already in like problem solving mode. And one day he said to me very bluntly, "I just need you to listen to me. I don't need you to solve this problem. I can solve this problem." And that was a real awakening in me. Maybe I did have a problem where I wasn't effectively listening to people. I was just hearing them. So I've tried to keep that in mind as I engage with others. Because these are definitely skills that build relationships. So one way to show that we understand what the other person is saying is to use our own words to repeat back. Like, it sounds like what you're saying is, "Oh, so you got excited when they said this." And it gives the other person an understanding that you've heard them, that you're listening to them. Um, they call it paraphrasing. If you're not sure, it's okay to say, "I'm not sure I understand that. Can you tell me that again?" Um, it's helpful to try to identify feelings that you hear as well. It sounds like you might have been disappointed, or it sounds like you're overjoyed about that promotion. Um, it's If we're not correct, we need to continue to repeat the process because people really want to feel like they're understood. Um, Effective communication happens when each person gets a turn to be listened to without interruption. That's a really important point. And that is, engaging back and forth and allowing people to complete their thoughts. Because sometimes some people like to pause for what feels like a great bit of time. It may actually only be a few moments. And we're really not effectively listening if we're trying to jump in and finish people's sentences. Um, that's been something else that I've had to watch in my engagement with other people, to really give people time to gather their thoughts, to communicate those thoughts, and to just be faithful to hang on and listen while they're engaged in that process. So I want to give some communication examples. Um, We have Lacey, and she is in the 6th grade, and her mother, Joan. Um, Lacey is in the 6th grade and is upset with her mother, Joan, because she did not have a signed parent permission slip to take the class field trip. Joan does not want to interrupt while Lacey is talking, and she listens patiently. When Lacey stops, her mother does not get defensive. Joan uses her own words to see if she understands Lacey's message. She starts out with, "I can see that you're really mad because I did not get the form signed." Rather than giving excuses, Joan apologizes to Lacey for failing to sign the form. And I can definitely say from experience that when you're the person who drops the ball, it's not always easy to be on the receiving end of someone else's frustration, anger, disappointment. But it's really important to give that person a chance to communicate that, and then hopefully to give you a chance to communicate a response as well. Then we have another example. We have Kelly and his dad. Kelly is an African American teenager, and he's angry when asked in his high school class to give the African American viewpoint on the Civil War. He thinks it's unfair to ask one person to speak for the entire group of people. His father quietly listens to Kelly as he vents his anger and asks questions to make sure he understands what Kelly is saying and feeling. And I really loved that exchange because it gave Kelly the space he needed to unload. His dad was faithful there with him, gave him time and the ability to express his feelings. And I hope they had a productive conversation after that. But dad didn't try to fix it, and that really spoke to me, as I shared, wanting to be a fixer. Dad didn't give him advice. He just let him talk about his feelings and his experience. So at this point, I want to invite all of us to practice our communication skills. So see if you can get a partner to practice nonverbal listening. And it's really an interesting exercise. So sit facing each other and decide which person will be the speaker and which person will be the listener, and just talk about something you did this weekend, or last week. And the listener is to use facial expressions, body posture, appropriate eye contact to demonstrate effective listening skills. Then, after a minute, change it up. And the second time I wrote rude. After a minute, have your listener look away, yawn, lean back, pay no attention, maybe go on their phone, and then talk about how that felt. Reverse the roles. So whoever was being the listener is now the speaker, and then you're the listener, and try it the other way, trade roles, and really talk about what you liked most when each person listened to one another. See how that feels. So this is a fairly short lesson. It's complex in its skill set. It really takes a while to build good listening skills. Some key points to take away today: family members feel valued when they're listened to. And those nonverbal behaviors, the way that you position yourself, the way that you, the body language you use is very important. Sometimes messages are interpreted incorrectly. And that happens a lot, I think, with our kids. If you have children, sometimes they use a tone that maybe they don't necessarily mean. I can remember as a child being constantly reminded by my mother to watch my tone. And it was very frustrating because I actually didn't mean to be sassy. It just kind of, I think it's ingrained in preteen behavior. So give space to understand what message is really being conveyed. Um, you don't have to always agree with your speaker. But really try not to interrupt until it's your turn to talk. And that's very hard. It's right now is very volatile times. We have, it feels like more reasons to disagree with people that we love right now in our country than to find those points of agreement. Um, and we may never change one another's minds, but we can try not to have broken relationships in those communication points, and to use that paraphrasing that, I think what I hear you saying is, or, wow, I get it, yeah, I hear you, those are very helpful tools for clarity, to show that you're listening, that you're following along. um, I think it's especially important. um, Turn off the TV, put down the cell phone. Um, that it seems to always be in our hands all the time, and in our kids' hands all the time, and in our friends' hands all the time. And I know that it's very much embedded in our culture, um, but it's really important to say, you're more important to me. This conversation is more important to me than scrolling.